this brings me to our keynote speaker. And I have to say this is a privilege of my life to be able to welcome our next guest on stage. And I would think that pretty much everybody here will have a piece of Emma Bridgewater in our kitchens. And Emma is a visionary. When she founded her eponymous company 40 years ago after she identified a gap in the market for colourful, practical ceramics. She kind of needs no introduction, does she? And she succeeded in leading the way to almost anybody that has ever wanted to start a company from their kitchen table. This is the ultimate kitchen table starter that we have here. And I'm delighted that she's joining us today. Her designs have become iconic, I think, in almost every British home. And in fact, it goes far beyond, our own land. So committed to UK manufacturing, Emma's Stoke-on-Trent factory employs over 200 people, exemplifying her dedication to British craftsmanship and design. And here, to share firsthand her remarkable story of endurance and success, her journey as a female entrepreneur, and her commitment to reviving a dying industry in Stoke. Please join me in welcoming Emma Bridgewater. Thank you, Emma. Thank you. Thank you.
It's such a nice thing.
Oh, my pleasure. Take a seat.
We don't need these, do we?
No, don't think so. Julie, do
I'll try not
we need
to.
them? Okay,
No.
right. Hang on, let me just...
Can you hear me? Yep.
And don't you just love that dresser in the background? Isn't that just great?
You've got to have one of them.
Yeah, here we go. Right. Okay, perfect. So I think many of you will know that, I mean, I started a live series about a year and a half ago where I think I've interviewed about 85 different people now about their different businesses and their journey, where they come from, what drives them, what their passion is. And I think it's so important to kind of start right at the beginning, start at the childhood, what the influences were. And we all love to hear someone's story because, you know, their journey tends to be every bit as interesting as the destination. We know the destination, we know it's super impressive, but what motivates them, I think, is as interesting as the destination itself. So on the basis, kind of, we all tend to be functions of our childhood. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. What was it like growing up in Oxford? And
Well, before when my parents divorced, Mum moved to Oxford and my dad stayed in Cambridge. So that sort of says an awful lot about my lucky start in life. My mum was she was something of a rebel. She came on quite conventional, but actually she was a rule breaker. And when she and my dad parted ways, she took my brother, sister, myself, the dogs, and our bikes off to Oxford, where she proceeded to break all the rules. Really, she bought a very large house with a very, very short lease on it, with all her trustees. She had a tiny private income, the trustees sort of tut-tutting about it. And she lucked in because when the freehold came up, she bought it. And this house was a real kind of destination in Oxford. She had very, very, very little money. And she encouraged me in particular, but she didn't mind us painting on the walls at all. And she never decorated the house. She just stuck our paintings and clippings from magazines and stuff on the walls. And she was very generous and she loved people. And so the house was always full of just like all sorts of people. And it never mattered how many there were for lunch or supper, as long as there was plenty of, always pretty cheap wine. There'd be more smoking and talking, really, than worrying about the menu. So she was this kind of very charismatic character who proceeded to marry an undergraduate. I remember him doing his finals. Lucky her, eh? And he was very, very wild, and he made her laugh. So I grew up in the sunshine of that lovely relationship. It didn't, like all good things, it didn't necessarily last forever, but it was those 10 years were fantastic. And meanwhile, my dad was a very hard worker, an entrepreneur. Careers go in families, don't they? You do what you know. And so I sort of knew about what it was like inside his business and inside his head. You know, I knew how stressful it was, and that didn't seem to be a huge problem. And so I sort of got a mix of, she was truly bohemian, he was very straight and conventional and sort of rather better at organising money, that kind of thing. So I got a bit of both, which was lucky because I'm that unlikely person with a sort of artistic, a sort of design vision, and just about the wit, the practical sort of instincts to make that work in the early days, when it could easily, I mean, you know, it was highly unlikely that it would work, but it did. I think that the genetic inheritance, you're right, was good. It was very lucky. Mum was a risk taker. My dad was kind of like, no, plan it.
But really interesting, isn't it? You know, somewhat chaotic and just found its flow.
Yes, I mean, it was. She made a great environment to be in, and I think that, I mean, her life was a kind. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. She made one very nice house after another, and they weren't a look at me exercise at all. She had no vanity, as far as I can remember. She just wanted. It was a gift to the world. She wanted everyone to have a lovely time. And when I see people doing beautiful lives self-consciously, I think, you're missing a trick. This isn't what it's for. If you're good at making a home, do things in it, you know, have real conversations. She was bold, and I liked. You know, it feels important that you do what you do for the right reasons.
I agree with you. I think there's, from listening to this, there's an authenticity. And that I think sort of so many of us, we want to create that genuine family home. You want to be that beacon that everyone wants to come to, but it's so difficult. There's so many pressures. You know, Andrea was talking about it earlier. Kind of that pressures up and down of the teenagers, the working life, the need to take part to compete. And it sounds as if there was a sort of a genuine authenticity going on in your upbringing.
Yes. Just do without our phones a whole lot more. Get off them. I know, you know, it's sort of almost impossible to do anything. You can't even park your car without one, unless it's here, where this is what it should be like. Where there's a nice parking space ready for you with a bollard with your name on it. But yeah, I mean, hers was she was much more likely to sort of get together with the neighbours and say, we're all going to go and have lunch by the Charwell. And the picnic would go in a wheelbarrow, the sort of 3/4 of a mile walk down to the river. And everyone would get quite plastered, and we'd all jump in the river, everybody. And that would be, I mean, they were often called, no, really, really, Shah, this is a picnic too far. They were always big, whether on the marshes in Norfolk, on the west coast of Scotland, but often Oxford. Oxford's got a huge benefit of 2 rivers and lots of water meadows. Perfect for swimming parties. And her bathing clothes were always just terrible. Often none, but she'd wrap herself in a bit of African cotton with me. Oh, God.
Idyllic, absolutely idyllic.
Yeah.
So what about you, you know, so growing up? So, you know, what were some of your passions? Because I guess we all think, oh gosh, you must have been creative. You must, you know, were you, but what were you like?
I still want to write a novel that makes me laugh and makes me cry. And that's what I would really admire myself for doing. I'm sure I never will quite make it. But I thought I was going to go into publishing. I read English literature at London University, failed to get into Cambridge, and thought I was going to go into publishing in some rather more creative. And then I realised that Virago had been invented on the tube train. There were people reading all the books that I had found. So that was very disconcerting. And I did go and talk to a literary agent, and she said, oh, darling, it's much better, try and write a novel. Go and write that novel. And then with a bit of luck, you won't have to be an agent. You can be a writer, which will be much better. But if it fails, you'll know a lot more about being a writer, which will make you a better literary agent. But I never quite got to an interview for that. Instead, I did a temporary job with, I worked for 18 months for 2 women a bit older than me who were running a creative company with enormous elan and confidence. But they had this brilliant thing, quite like my mum, very, very little admiration for ambition. And sort of by accident, and slightly to their tut-tut annoyance, Diana Spencer, about to become Princess of Wales, wore one of the jumpers. Red, white sheet, one black one. Everyone can remember it. Every woman in the world wanted that jumper. And they'd go, oh, it's such a... I mean, it's really a nuisance. And they sort of grudgingly upped production from 200 to 250 to 300 a week. And I look back on that and I just think, you clever women. They didn't let that moment of potential madness have any effect on them at all. I've been quite perplexed by it. And I went to work for them when that had just happened because they were feeling a bit kind of overcome by it. But they hung on. I think there's an awful lot to be said for businesses that know what they want to be, you know, that aren't just grow, grow, sell, sell. I started my business in the 80s and assumed that was what I was going to do before I went to Stoke, when I realised I would never do that because the place just got hold of me and the vision I'd had of the China I couldn't find and what I found in Stoke just really lit a fire in me that won't go out. Unfortunately for me. 40 years on, I'm still in the business. I'm less involved. I'm sort of, because I really passionately want the commitment to Stoke to outlast me. My kids aren't involved. I didn't want to get involved in my dad's business. It has, you know, I sort of hoped they might. I left it too late, been too English about it, said, do your own thing, darling. You know, so my oldest daughter's an acrobat, a singer and an acrobat. Kitty's a painter, far too good a painter to come and mess around in a obviously commercial office. Margaret's a teacher. I've got a proper job, Mum. And Michael is also a musician and a carpenter. So, you know, they just weren't going to do it. I didn't train them right. Thank heavens. And I just hope, the thing that matters the most to me about my business is making lovely things, connecting with our customers and the people who do that, who make the product in Stoke. I find our deindustrialised situation just awful, perplexing. So it's a long way from my childhood.
Yeah.
We don't need to go back there, do we?
No, we can certainly move on to your childhood. But I do think it sounds, I think all of us can have that kind of dreamy, those picnics, that idyllic. There's something I think really charming about it that is really touching.
It was charmed, yeah. Definitely. And there was plenty of tragedy came later, but I don't know, somehow the good has always outweighed the bad. Heather, when you talk, that's what you embody, exactly what my mum gave all of us. She didn't know what lay ahead, but somehow the good does always, it's got to outweigh the bad. It's got to, it's simply got to. One of my sisters died of cancer, and like Deborah, she fitted about 1 million things into that last. She just wasn't going to live ill. She wanted to get loads of stuff done, and that's such a good sign, isn't it?
Very, very interesting. So let's sort of move on from the childhood and think about the business. And those, they say that women make the best entrepreneurs because we're really good at spotting that there's something missing in the market. They find the products that don't exist. But I think that the hardest thing for any entrepreneur is coming up with the idea. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the story of how you found your inspiration for your business, take us back to that story of where it first began.
Well, I left Sally and Joe pondering on whether to make a few more Red Sheep jerseys. It's very nice they have just had another moment with them. They didn't at the time. I'd saved about £300, which was pretty much the first time in my life I'd been in credit. Got very, very, very bad overdraft habits. So I thought, I've got £300 in the bank, and I've learnt so much in my dad's business and in Warm and Wonderful. Right, what's the business going to be? And I had a very weird few months, pretty much going to bed every night saying, just tell me, universe, just tell me what I'm supposed to be doing, because I know I've got lots and lots of energy, but I can't work out what it's going to be, and I don't want to write that novel yet. And I was sofa surfing, and I was, my cousin Kate and I had a catering business. Astonishing we didn't kill anyone. Absolutely astonishing. But we didn't. We were quite good at it, really. But neither of us were fully committed to that. And So I was asking the universe the question, what shall I do, what shall I do? And I had what I can only call a hallucination in a china shop, looking for a present for my mum. I'd thought 2 cups and saucers to say, I'm sorry I'm such a tit and I'm running around and I never come home, but you know I love you and I really wish I was sitting at your kitchen table talking and talking and talking. She was really good at talking. And she was very good at listening. She'd make you talk. And then she'd say something really piercing. And it was really odd. There was nothing in... The china shop was baffling. There was, Wedgwood jasperware. I was talking about that to someone here earlier. Just baffling formality still. And this was, bear in mind, 84. And sort of what pure white bone china. There was a Portmeirion, who I've always loved, but it wasn't what I wanted. Mum only had 1 or 2 pieces in it. She left her wedding china behind when she left my dad, and my stepmother sold it on Royston Market. So there was no matching china available in her mind. And so her dresser was just an accumulation of things she liked or that had been given to her by people she loved. And so it was a weird mixture, but lovely. And there always seemed to be a dresser miraculously provided in each of her houses. And I was picturing that dresser at the end of the china shop and thinking, that's what should be here, with a whole lot of colourful mismatched pottery on it, like hers. That's what I'm going to make. I wasn't a potter, didn't know about business or design, but I did have a really strong, surging conviction that that was what I was supposed to do. I consulted a grown-up friend. He gave me one contact in Stoke because by chance he'd just been there. And he said, this is good. This guy's, I think he's who you need. He's a model maker. And I made to take his Sam's business card, and Terry said, no, I'm keeping that. Write it on a fag packet. And ring him tomorrow. And I said, I'm not quite ready yet. And he said, ring him tomorrow and then get ready and go. And when you've been there, come straight back and tell me all about it. It sounds really good fun. And I did exactly what Terry told me, and it was probably 3 weeks later that I went to Stoke, having ruminated on shapes. I knew it was going to be a mugs business, but I didn't want it to look like mugs. So I was thinking about what were the companions. So it was a small bowl, a milk jug, and a dish. So that it sort of, I could just see those on her dresser. And I drew those shapes. I went and bought a ticket at Euston, got off at Stoke-on-Trent. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. I was so wet behind the ears. Oxford and Cambridge, holidays in Norfolk and Cornwall and Northumberland. It seems to me sometimes that the Midlands are like the flyover states. Too many of us never go there. Yeah. I'd had no experience of what post-industrial Britain was like. I had been watching Orgreave, which was just down the road in Nottinghamshire, on telly. I loathed Margaret Thatcher with a desperate passion for what she was doing to the miners. And then I got to Stoke, and it was like, it was being done to everybody. And I couldn't bear it. But coupled with that fury, there was the romance of Minton and Spode. And it was in the land of giants, but the place looked like World War III had just taken place. And really, it's just so awful that those cities were abandoned. It wasn't just Margaret Thatcher. Dick Crosland said, it's in his diaries, the Labour Party were thinking about it in the 60s. The move away, let's send all the dirty jobs abroad and we'll all work in offices. They didn't do any mitigation for somewhere like Stoke or any of the other industrial cities, some of whom have got it together much better subsequently. But, very, very, very poor education before and since. Terrible health outcomes, I'm not going to do it, that's enough ranting, but I really, really wanted to catch the ceramics industry by the tail and haul it back into the room and make one of the locked-up factories full of people again. And what Joy said earlier about the vision thing is everything. Whether it's the company that you long to be associated, go and kind of put your effort into making bigger and better, or a business that you want to start, or a cause you want to support, you need that vision. I think if it isn't sent to you, you do need to try and sit down and actually write a description of who I want to be in 10 years' time. I'm giving myself this advice carefully because I think quite a lot of us are in this predicament in that I faced sort of, it's now about 7 years ago, to the fact that this is the third. This is it. I used to think, why would people get divorced in their 50s? Don't they know it's all over? Then I got to my 50s and thought, hang on, there's a whole big chunk next, and I need to make that something I'm proud of, something I'm interested in, something I want to get out of bed for every morning. And I need to gradually pull away from my business, otherwise it hasn't got a prayer of working without me. I'd seen that happen at Port Marion. Susan Williams-Ellis wouldn't leave it alone. Fair dues, it was her company, but it didn't benefit the company in the long run. There wasn't a succession, and I'm trying to sort of make that happen. It's happening. When I got divorced, investors had to be found. Let nobody tell you that working with the venture capital sort of model is easy. It's a nightmare, but it's an interesting nightmare, and I think it'll be good, but it's not. It's really difficult if you've had full kind of control, and control's the wrong word. If you've had agency within your own business, losing that is like awful, or really awful. But that's my personal bad character. I'm dealing with it.
I think there's so many interesting things there where we could talk to you for just unpick some of those things where it is. I think that preoccupation, as you talk about the third, and I think it's something that for many of us are in midlife and looking for what that next source of joy or fulfillment is. It could be career. It's about purpose and fulfillment, and it's very interesting. I think
it's all
listening
about
to you, sort of. Just it's not quite legacy, but it is thinking about
sort of
what fills my cup.
Yeah, no, it's the opposite of legacy, which maybe wrongly, maybe unkindly, maybe I'm a little bit prejudiced, I think of as a male preoccupation. I feel that what I've done has been a kind of group endeavour, and my part in it is kind of done. The point is whilst I can be useful, there's so much that needs doing, isn't there? I mean, why would one retire? I really can't get my head around that. I mean, if I was, I don't know, I really can't imagine doing it. What's the point? I mean, they're having a lovely time out there, but I don't want to be there. Not at all.
Exactly. So let's pull you back to the, you've had the idea in this China shop. This idea, it's all about connection. I love the sort of almost the romanticism.
It's me to the almost certainly woman who's going to fall in love with it in the shop and want it as a part of her domestic life. I never saw it as a kind of whole solution. Because of Mum's kind of collage dresser, I saw it as a really, really great ingredient, like a really good pair of jeans that you'd always be really pleased. Oh, I love that. And then you can go and find some more. Oh, they look quite nice together. I might go get some more, is what I hope you think.
So let's go back to you've had the idea, you've had this business card, you've arrived in Stoke, a bit sort of shocked by what you've got off the train and there is Stoke and you're thinking, wow. But your business, you're in your 20s and you've had this idea, you go from sort of 0 to 60 fairly quickly. What were some of the tipping points? Because I think it's all very well, many people in the room will have an idea or they've got their business to a certain level, but it is how do you go from that kind of that thinking to doing and achieving?
I don't really know, and I guess that's why it worked. I sometimes realize. I mean, I think I've got sort of a refusal to give up that's more of a condition than a characteristic. I overheard my ex saying, sort of fending off someone at a party, saying, oh, wow, there are lots more people forging. I mean, there should be women like Emma forging their way up Stoke-on-Trent and starting businesses. And he just said, have you met her? He wasn't being nice. So I mean, there was huge number of setbacks and bad moments, but I sort of, it's just like Joy's thing. If you see yourself at the other side of the problem, and that's what I think I always did. When that's sorted out, I'll be doing this. I'll sort that out by doing this in order to do this. So your sort of forward momentum. I think it's a really strong entrepreneurial characteristic, and if you don't find it in yourself, don't start a business. And actually, I don't think anyone should ever encourage people to start businesses. I think it's really irresponsible. I think we should discourage you. You should do it in the teeth of opposition. Every man I ever met, but starting and ending with my father, begged me to desist and have nothing to do with the manufacturing. And I know what they were saying. They were saying, you're good at the marketing, you're quite good at the design, get some other designers. I've always got a lot of skepticism from the men in my life. But don't do the manufacturing, you don't know how to do it. But they hadn't had that extraordinary conversion, first a hallucination, then a sort of conversion. Hallucination in the china shop, and then when I got to Stoke, I just knew that I wanted to make something work here, make something happen. Quite like my sister Nell's sudden understanding that circus was about to die, and she was just not having any of it. And we never talked about this, but we had the same kind of, no, it's not stopping, it's going to be like this, and sort of reinventing it. Difference is, I think she's had a startling effect on circus, whereas sadly, there are no women beat a path to Stoke-on-Trent. No, that's not true. There are businesses starting up there, and there are some. It hasn't been transformed. I really wish I could say it had, and I do always. I mean, of course, there are some good things happening there, but there are people closing all the time as well.
But what do you think it invoked in you? There you were getting off the train. There was something about Stoke. Or something about that industry, the people that, when you had everybody else pushing off to the Far East, in the so-called sort of desire to save costs, automate, all those other things. Yeah. Because this has become a real passion for you, hasn't it?
Yes, it was I think it was often misguided, and it was to do with the loss of connection with their market. Stoke had become quite introverted. Maybe, which is also one of its great advantages. I mean, it's an absolutely splendid city, and I've had some of the funniest times of my life there. I felt they deserved better. It seemed so careless, the whole business of just sort of walking away from it. And people say they must be so grateful to you in Stoke. The great thing is, that is what they're not. They tease me and they say how stupid I am, and I mean, I have every reason to be massively grateful to them. It's been a huge adventure. I mean, such an odd thing to have done for 40 years, but very, very, very exciting. And I think just find something. I don't know that. It's not easy to sit in London and think about a sort of bigger, wider picture of your life and your values and what you feel about the world you live in. And the sort of perpetual news feed is so deranging. I realised in a board meeting recently that it's like Donald Trump's become everybody's president. And all sorts of, there was like B Corp was suddenly, it might be a sort of expendable thing. No. The idea that all the kindnesses, the intelligent changes that have happened in terms of sort of perceiving how business might behave could go out the window in a heartbeat. I guess what I felt about Stoke is you can make a stand. And if nobody else agrees with you, you can still make a stand. Because it was so evident that making one of those factories work again created the community that we all long to live in. There's a real cohesion. Cities like Stoke are very baffling to economists when they try and score what's going on there. There's this one that goes completely, it sends all their statistics mad, which is the happiness factor. A sort of the trick question at the end of the questionnaire, all about health and education and crime and all that, is how many, in an emergency, how many people could you call in the middle of the night? And most of us struggle to think of, because our families are so atomised and all that, we haven't got someone next door that we could wake up. Stoke, they're going 20, 30, 40. I mean, like, how many do you want? Because they all know each other, and that they use that was the payoff to lots of the very bad things about industrial might, was that they formed these really, really cohesive and fun communities beneath the umbrellas of the mines and foundries and pot banks. I wanted one of them back.
It's so interesting. It's about connection and community again, isn't it? And love.
Definitely. It's being in a community that knows what it's doing. There's nothing nicer than walking around the factory with someone who hasn't seen it before. If it's a man of a certain age, I'm hoping that he'll probably be in tears by the end of it, especially if he did asset stripping in his 20s. But it's a very sort of analogue business that everyone thinks, oh my God, if I started a business, I think it would be just like this. Because you'll get lots of banter, not bad banter, funny, really. I mean, I get quite a lot of quite personal jokes, but they're observant and hilarious. And the tour guides know an immense amount about the city and the industry. Lucky me.
So let's talk a little bit about design. And I think one of the interesting things about you is that almost everybody here, I think, will own a piece of china. I'm going to do a poll in a minute.
Oh, yes.
But I think,
I'd like to talk to the ones who haven't.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, do you have people coming up to you going, oh, my favourite is this, or I collect that? As if it's sort of...
Quite often. When are you going to bring the red stars back? Or
yes.
The one I really like is that one you did 25 years ago.
Well, I want you to bring back blue plums, just on that basis. But so let's do a poll. Who here has a piece of Emma Bridgewater at home?
That's pretty nice.
Okay.
I'm more interested in...
No, exactly. So now, turn it on its head. Who doesn't?
Good.
Right.
I'll see you after.
Exactly. That is. You can set up a shop later on.
No, just a consultation service.
Exactly. But it's. But I mean, I remember I've actually been to Stoke. I remember coming up with my mum in the 90s. I bought my first flat, and I came and I bought my entire china from your second shop, and it was the most amazing experience.
Oh, that's so
and
nice.
I loved it. I loved it because also it was full of stuff that you wouldn't be able to get in the shops. So there's lots of pieces I've got that I know, and it's not perfect. That's the whole point of it. And but I think everybody has their favourite design, and so there's sort of so many questions around this. But I guess, where do you get your influences from? Is it, when do you see the origins of a new design?
I'm sort of playing with kicking the tires on this, but I think what happens is the stuff you get in childhood, the influences you're subject to then, probably just during the phase when your brain is still growing, which is up to, what is it, for a woman, it's something like 12. That stuff, that's the core of my imagination. And what I'm doing, I mean, when I look for it, when people talk about getting inspiration, it's not direct. So I go to exciting, interesting places, to Kathmandu, to Venice, to Texas, not because I'm going to come back and do designs related to those places, but because they're places that make my heart beat faster, that make me excited in very different ways for very different reasons, but brings out in me an urge to kind of dig deeper and do better and really try and say exactly what it is that I love. I can identify, it's hugely rooted in the children's books I was read. We all know how important that is, and we're blessed with an incredible publishing industry that, the richness of children's books is great. I'd say also lots of the old ones are really important, and Maurice Sendak forever, Edward Ardazoni, Beatrix Potter. I mean, there's a sort of, Richard Scarry, there's a fairly predictable roster, but the natural world, over and over again, and primary sources don't. I mean, I always try and impress on people working in the studio. Don't think that your next great design you're going to find in the high street or at the trade fair. You're not. You have got to live your life. You've got to find out what you really love. But if in doubt, draw from life, and then make sure you're collecting the things that really matter to you, that really say something very important to you, and that's the effect you must have. You're not doing a design of rabbits for Easter. You've got to think of a way of doing something for Easter that makes people go, oh my God, or that feels like a recognition of some kind. Obviously that's hard to achieve, but because we set out with that, I give them a sort of a manifesto of ideas, and with some visual refs, which will almost always have some children's book illustrations and William Morris is probably one of my greatest heroes. I do go back to him a lot. But design it's secret and private. It should be sort of altruistic and sort of full of outreach. It's a pity we don't teach kids to draw because it's quite hard for people to draw. But actually, once you get over I think we all get embarrassed that we're not doing it right somewhere, at about whatever it is, 10, 11, 12, and stop. Whereas if you push on through that and just keep drawing, it's just like even the doodles you do in a lecture will recall that important sentence or that idea that you really liked. Those drawings will have lots and lots of very, very important stuff in them.
Absolutely. And so obviously we've got a room full of women, a few men, but one of the things that we have talked about a lot at Really Helpful Club is imposter syndrome, and that sort of sense of showing up but not quite feeling, like you belong in the room. There you were in your, in the 80s, in your 20s, starting a business, an industrialist, an entrepreneur, although,
But based in London, all amongst the yuppies.
Absolutely. And how did you sort of perceive yourself? And did you suffer from imposter syndrome, even though obviously it wasn't coined as that? But did you feel like you were showing up? Did you?
I don't think one's normal if you really do feel fully equipped for every challenge. And I think, as was touched on earlier on, men are they're good at being optimistic about what they might be able to do, whereas we might be a bit too honest about the qualifications we haven't quite yet got. I think sometimes I feel very kind of, what on earth am I doing? This is completely mad. But not very often. And I think it's a bit like feeling self-conscious at a party. The antidote to that is to go and find out about someone. And when you feel, crumbs, can I do that? I'm not the person for this. How do I do this? This has got a great big unknown lot of stuff in it. Plunging in is sort of the best way of dealing with that. And the superpower that I think probably both my parents gave me in spades, but I would really, really urge everyone to know that you can ring anybody or email them, and the joy of DMing that's the only reason to be on Instagram, or far the best reason as far as I'm concerned. But you can't waste their time. Identify the person who you think really does have the thing you want to talk about, the thing you want to know. They will be very, very, very generous, but don't waste their time, and don't, because it's hard to go back to that person if actually they're the wrong person and you've just been keeping them away from something frightfully important that they should be doing. But if you've got a clear, suddenly you've understood, I need to understand. Oh, something thrilling like merchandising. You find out someone who's you reckon has got a proper grip on it, and make an approach to them. They will, I would almost guarantee you, make time to explain. We all love imparting our wisdom, our experience. Just go ask. As part of getting out of I'm not up to this, I'm not good enough for this, make it into a project. Yeah. But yes, of course, lots and lots of whole periods of one's life, and you think, this is awful. This is I can't possibly sustain this. I don't know what I'm talking about. But you just sort of got to pick it up again, haven't you?
Well, and I think also, yes, it's recognising it as well. I mean, I think that any of us here would be lying if we said we didn't suffer from it. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes you've got to put that visible blanket on and get on with it. But it's recognising it, I think, which is so important. I'd like to finish by asking you. You must have experienced so many highs across your life and your career, and you must have so many things that you must be so proud of. You talked about your 4 children as well, and they must be enormously proud of their mother.
Surprised.
Surprised?
Well, because they've each passed the 23-year mark, going, bloody hell, Mum, 23?
Yes. I mean, it is remarkable, isn't it? Because again, we start things so late in life now.
Then it's just straight on to, but you weren't here much, were you?
Yeah.
Is there any Weetabix? Why have we run out of Marmite? I mean, or something.
That is the luxury. Isn't that the luxury of being a child, isn't it? Or that you can, your mother can be this amazing success, but you can still bring her down with one comment, can't you? And because she loves you. That is the joy of unconditional love, really, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, luckily, as time goes by, I'm further away from the excruciatingly painful thing that women working hard all know all too well of trying to balance the two obligations. Guilt at both ends of a very long car drive is really what it's like.
Something which I think will resonate hugely with everyone here. But here you are, everybody in your world must be extraordinarily proud of you. What's the standout moment for you?
Okay, I'm not sure. I haven't sort of prepped that, but this is a very good one, and it's slightly plays to something that came up earlier, which is the entrepreneurial kind of mindset is sort of fast forward. You're always looking over the hill at the things you haven't done, things yet to be done, the ender's to-do list, and but sometimes you manage to step out, sort of step off that crazy conveyor belt. I think those are the good moments. And Matthew and I had one together in the factory one June day. It was probably the 3rd of the literary festivals that I ran there in the factory in Stoke with Tristram Hunt, which he'd kindly volunteered me to host when he was Shadow Education. That's an amazing career, isn't it? And we looked. We sort of were up in the studio looking down into the courtyard of the factory, and it was full of children sitting around. That we'd put straw bales all the way around the courtyard, so that there was lots and lots of places to sit, and lots of children sitting reading books, and as well as lots of other people milling around. It's a marvellous, morose group of local poets. I love them. I'd had physically drag people in there, but it was always good. And we were able to sort of see then that we'd made something fantastic. It was obviously seeing the energy of the factory going into another project. Somehow it's quite hard to find a moment when you step away from what you've been so wholly immersed in. My mum said she wants to describe being outside in the evening. The stables were across the lawn, and she said, what I really love is you've had a great day's hunting, and the children you've let them off. They've done lots of chores in the stables, and you're just finishing up, and they've scampered indoors, and all the lights are on in the house, and you can see them running around inside the house. And I might have just arrived from London. She said suddenly and she said it's like a painting. I've just forgotten his name, a Victorian painter who painted exteriors at night, house exteriors at night. When you suddenly see the life that you've made, whereas otherwise you're mostly just, oh my God, the bread's burning. Or it's an unmanufactured moment, I think, isn't it? When you suddenly, Atkinson Grimshaw, she said, my house, suddenly the scene reminds me of an Atkinson Grimshaw, and I realise I've made a nice set up. So that genuinely plays to what I was saying earlier, that she was extremely unself-conscious about what she was doing. But that's what I felt in the factory. I was able to see the factory as a great achievement because it was, particularly because it was sort of not being a factory, it was being the setting for a book festival.
A pause moment.
It was lovely.
Emma, thank you very much. This has been a very special moment for me, and I would like everyone to join me in thanking you for bringing so much joy to our kitchen table and for taking the time to come and talk to us today. It's been very special. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you.
That was so nice.
You too.